Slums of Hong Kong. Slums of Hong Kong. Urban poverty and slum-like conditions affect thousands of people in Hong Kong. Despite its reputation for affluence and luxury, yet, underneath the city's gleaming exterior is urban poverty and slum-like conditions affect thousands of people in Hong Kong. Despite its reputation for affluence and luxury, yet, underneath the city's gleaming exterior is a conflict that can't be ignored. The wealthiest properties in the world are situated mere steps away from the smallest, most crowded and sometimes unhygienic living spaces. The cramped and impoverished living conditions symbolize a far more urgent issue facing the city: a stark imbalance of wealth, looming capacity concerns, inadequate housing options, and fundamental structural problems. Yet, many residents find themselves excluded from the economic prosperity being trumpeted by the government. Cage homes and coffin cubicles, this is where many of Hong Kong's poorest residents live. Most minds associate slums with temporary shanties, rough terrain, and poorly constructed dwellings. In Hong Kong, these tiny living spaces are sequestered within buildings that appear normal to outsiders. The most well-known instances are referred to as cage homes and coffin homes. Cage home dwellers sleep in bars of wire with cramped living quarters. Each tenant gets a pre-existing box, facing whose occupants are separated only by thin walls. The coffin homes are just as appalling as the cage ones. Dark, confined wooden cubicles only a few paces in size. Most such dwellings lack natural light, suffer from moisture, and are overrun by insects. They remain due to the ongoing struggle with housing affordability, which began after World War II. The housing crisis. How did we get here? Problems with housing in Hong Kong began many years ago. Greater Hong Kong's population grew markedly following the Second World War, largely due to an influx of people from neighboring regions. The emergence of slums on the city's hillsides in the 1950s and 60s led the government to develop programs to relocate families and construct new developments for them. Still, new residential towers failed to keep up with the influx of people moving to the city. Around 70% of Hong Kong's population now resides in public housing, pointing to how expensive buying or renting a property elsewhere is. A major problem is that there is a severe lack of available land. A large share of Hong Kong's land is earmarked for nature reserves and luxury projects. Only a small amount of land is up for grabs, putting it into fierce competition among property developers. The average cost of buying a home in Hong Kong by the year 2024 was among the highest anywhere on earth. Buying a home is way beyond the reach of most middle or low-income families. Many people renting the smallest apartments find they're spending their entire income on housing. The human cost. Stories from the margins. Each person living in a coffin home or cage apartment has a unique story to tell. Real people are struggling under Hong Kong's housing crisis. Every person in these situations has a unique story and ambitions. Mrs. Loon, a widow in her late 70s, has spent the last 10 years sleeping in a 25-square-foot coffin home. After retiring, her pension was too modest to afford even the most modest high-rise apartment. She's little more than a narrow bed and a few belongings in her space. The electric fan she uses for cooling is her only comfort during hot months. Her dream, in her words, is a basic one: to finally have a room of my own with an open window. Government response. Progress or posturing. There has been widespread criticism over what many perceive as the Hong Kong government's tardy and inadequate efforts to solve the housing crisis. The policies the government has proposed so far have seemed like too little, too late to address critics' concerns. Although the amount of public housing has grown, a chance at an affordable flat remains a long-term aspiration for many in Hong Kong. Apart from these emergency programs, permanent solutions remain out of reach. A city of contrasts, the slums tell us much about the true face of Hong Kong. Slum conditions in Hong Kong echo much more than a simple lack of adequate housing. This sheds light on a community in which wealth increases but prosperity doesn't, where architectural sophistication favors the wealthy over ordinary residents and urban development privileges corporations over people. Hong Kong presents a sharp divide between the opulent and the poor. High-rise buildings praised by architects and low-income estates where people lack basic privacy. Kids in the shadows, childhood in the slums of Hong Kong. Whereas the economic and material struggles of adults in Hong Kong's slums have been well documented, their effect on kids is arguably even more poignant and considerably longer lasting. Countless children are growing up in subdivided units, cage homes, and filthy living conditions. Their childhoods characterized by deprivation, disenfranchisement, and unrealized potential. For these young residents, life is far removed from the rosy picture of Hong Kong as a city of prosperity and promise. In most subdivided homes, 4 or 5 individuals share a space the size of a typical parking lot. Many children have to share beds with siblings or parents. With little space for personal items or privacy, space for playing is hard to find. Never mind for a desk for studying or a bookshelf. In conditions of this tightness, children are often made to study on their beds next to sleeping siblings, or while tuning out the sounds of thin plywood walls. Concentration in school, psychological health, and sleep quality all degrade. Research by social services and NGOs establishes that children raised in those spaces have high rates of stress and poor school performance. Emotionally, Hong Kong's slum children mature quickly. They learn of their parents' financial hardships at a young age. They get part-time jobs as teenagers to help their parents. Others develop an inner sense of shame for their homes. This stigma can socially isolate and restrict their ambitions. While there are school psychological counseling programs, many children never speak up, being afraid of being judged, or just thinking that their lives are typical, since everyone else around them also lives in the same conditions.